I get pitched half a dozen times a week for people to come on my podcast. And generally, those people have absolutely nothing to do with voiceover. They offer no services whatsoever that are relevant to voice actors, but whoever is pitching them, the promotion agency, whoever, are convinced they would be perfect for my audience because usually they've got a book to sell or a course to sell. And so imagine my surprise when Kay Bess, whom, I didn't even know that Kay Bess knew who I was, reached out to me and said, Mark, I want to come on your podcast, but I want to interview you. And I was like, wow, that's an interesting proposition. So congratulations, Kay Bess, on being the first person who has ever pitched me a podcast idea where I was like, yeah, let's do that.
That's great. Thank you. I had one good idea in my life and that was it.
I'm feeling a little bit of pressure now, though, because I was like, can I be a worthy guest on my own show? I don't know. We're about to find out.
Yeah. Indeed. All right. Well, are you passing the baton to me?
That's it. You're in the driver's seat. It's your show now. It's the Everyday VOpreneur podcast with Kay Bess.
Fantastic.
We're going to change the graphics up and everything.
Excellent. That's so good. Well, welcome everyone. I have no expectation that anybody knows who I am. I mean, but so let me just give you a little background on why I called Mark and made this suggestion. I have been in the field of voiceover for about 40 years. And coming from Los Angeles, coming from an actor's background, I went to college in Los Angeles to become an actor, and I won't bore you with that big long story, but I ended up, starting a career in voiceover, and it wasn't my intention. It was my intention, to win an Oscar by the time I was 30, and that didn't work out. But I did sort of accidentally fall into is a weird phrase, but I did sort of accidentally step into this this career of being a voice actor when it wasn't a very popular thing. It was the lowest rung on the actor stair step, right? If you came to LA to be I know.
Depending on who you talk to, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, depending upon from whence you come. But you come to LA to be a film actor. And if you can't do film, you do television. Well, what kind of television? You do evening, things that, dramas that air at night. If you don't do those, perhaps you do daytime television. You do soap operas, right? Well, if you can't get into soap operas, you do commercials. And if you can't get into on-camera commercials, then you do voiceover. And that's like it. There's no other, there's no other rung, below that. So that's where I started, in a commercial promo. And then I ventured into broadcast narration and then live announcing. And then many years later, like 25 years later, I ventured into animation and video games and dubbing. And that's kind of where I live these days. But that was a bit of a reinvention of my career. But I am a coach, and I teach technique. I teach commercial technique, and I teach some acting for video games as well. And I offer a good dose of encouragement, and reality checking, because I think people have crazy expectations about how fast they can move through a career and make a living. And if they can
6 months to 6 figures, right?
That's exactly. 6 months to 6 figures. So I offer a bit of that, but so many of the people that I coach really need to know about what it is to be a voiceover entrepreneur, frankly, to be a business person, to harness the incredible world of marketing and going out and securing your own clients, and how you organize your life around that, how you organize your day and your business around that. And I don't know a bloody thing about it, because the only thing that I have done really is have a relationship with an agent. Mm-hmm. I get my auditions by email. I send them in a timely manner, and then I go about my business. And every once in a while I get thrown a job. And that really has been kind of the sum total of my career, with a few little offshoots now and again where I've really extended myself and all of that. So that's my background. And that is why I thought, I am growing weary of kind of the sound of my own voice saying to people that I coach, I'm so sorry, I can't help you there. I don't know where to send you. Yes, marketing is necessary. Yes, you need to learn how to reach out to people. Yes, there are ways to sort of organize your day so you're not, clouded in a bubble and you're out of touch with reality, and you don't feel so alone in the business, right? But I don't know anything about it. And I have watched you, Mark, um, I'm in your Facebook group and I lurk, and I watch and I listen and I learn, um, and we have mutual friends in the business and they speak so highly of you, and everything I've seen of you is like so straight up and honest and forthright and super helpful, and you don't pull punches, so that was what just made me think like, I should talk to Mark. I should talk to Mark for the benefit of the people who follow me and need that perspective and the kind of advice that I cannot help them with. And the tiny little boon for me is, I get to talk to you, which is always fun. I hosted my own podcast years ago. I don't do it anymore, but I loved it, and so it's a fun little medium. And then I also, I get to tell your listeners and followers what I do, and it's just kind of a lovely exchange to me.
I agree.
So that is kind of the background of things. And I am just going to interview you. So
let's do it.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to welcome you, and I'd like to welcome my guest, Marc Scott, to his own podcast. And we're going to start at the very beginning, just like in The Sound of Music. And I just want to ask you, Mark, how did you get into voiceover?
Like many, I came from radio, and I was doing voiceover without realizing that I was doing voiceover, because when you're in radio, it's just part of your job to do commercials, right? You came in an hour before your shift every day and they handed you a stack and you walked in and you read them and that was it. And so you were doing voiceover. You just didn't know you were doing voiceover. You were doing production because that was your production responsibility.
Yeah.
And over the years of doing that, you start to make connections, build out a network. And so then it's guy that owns a business outside of town is coming and saying, hey, could you do my spot, or hey, could you do this thing for me, or whatever. And so you start to build a network. And again, still, you don't really realize that you're doing voiceover, or at least I didn't anyway, that I was doing voiceover. I thought I was just doing part of my job of being on radio. But then for anybody who's been in radio, for most people anyway, who have been in radio, you realize very quickly that more often than not, radio is not a sustainable income. And so you're always looking for ways to supplement that radio income. And so when I started having people who were hiring me outside of the station to do stuff, there was a moment when I was like, well, if this guy's hiring me to do something, then maybe there's somebody else out there who wants to hire me to do something. And so a little bit of research brought me to some online casting sites. So this would have been, when would this have been? I'm going to say like somewhere around 2008, 9, 10, kind of in that.
All right.
Kind of in that area, maybe.
Yeah.
Started doing some online casting, booking some jobs on online casting. Those are what I like to refer to as the glory days of online casting.
Yeah.
They weren't run by idiots. They weren't run by algorithms. They weren't overrun by voice actors.
Mm-hmm.
And so, if you were a mediocre voice actor, which I was, you could still make a decent amount of money on those sites.
So you said around 2012, is that right? 2010, 2012?
It was kind of in that like 8, 9, 10, 11, kind of in that,
okay. Yeah,
in that range. Yeah.
I
so
I recall that. I recall that era of pay to plays. Yeah.
It was an interesting time because on one hand, you had a lot of voice actors who were the, we'll call them the A-list, or like the big reputable, the LA voice actors or whatever, who weren't a big fan of what was going on online casting, because it was very much a disruption to the establishment. But then you got guys like me who literally live in a small town in the middle of nowhere and realizing, like this is the only shot potentially that I've got to get access to some of these jobs. And like Bob's Hardware is not hiring an LA agent to source their local commercial or whatever, right? So there was almost I don't know, it was like a democratization of the industry maybe that kind of took place. But it was really interesting to see the two different perspectives. The guy like me that's saying this is great, I'm getting access to opportunities, but then the ones who were established in it, always done it a certain way, saying, wait a minute, you're messing with how I'm used to the industry rolling. And so then there's some conflict there. And so that was an interesting time. And I think that agent evolution has continued to happen. I think good agents continue to thrive and continue to be dominant forces. I think there were agents who ultimately had to close their doors because they couldn't get access to the jobs anymore, or, they weren't hustling in the same way. They blame rates. Of course, rates erosion has been very real. And so, I mean, I've lived through all of those things as well, but all along, it all came back to, for me, there are people out there who need these jobs. Not all of them know about agents, or they don't want to go to an agent. Not all of them know about online casting, or they don't want to go to online casting. And so if I can connect with these people directly, then I can establish a client base, just like if I was a real estate agent or a plumber or a landscape guy, like you establish relationships and build a client base. And so that was kind of the approach that I took to it.
Yeah, that's it. It's so organic, right? What an organic process that is. And it seems to me that it stemmed out of your curiosity about, well, if this guy needs a voice, maybe this guy across town in this other business needs a voice too. I mean, what a germinating question that is, right? To then
definitely wasn't
prompt
planned.
you to go out. Right. Yeah. It's just like, it's a very logical, natural evolution of the question, I think. And that was a really interesting time, I'll tell you, because I have been an LA talent for the 95% of my career. And I remember pay to plays and I was like, what is this? I didn't have a kind of, oh, they're messing with us kind of thing. For a long time, I've had a love-hate relationship with the union. And so, the erosion of union work, it has been that's been a really big thing for people who are acclimated to that kind of work and being in a union town and all of that. So I was always very curious about it, and then I just remember this time where the union kind of came in, like an overlord, kind of like, what's happening here? And they, no, you can't do this. And, and it was sort of like, whoa, but all the work is going away. I mean, there was this perfect storm in 2000 with the which is so long ago. Oh my God. But it's had such reverberations, right? With the strike, the commercial strike, and we never recovered from that. The union absolutely never recovered from that. And then you had this influx of all this online work, everybody getting home studios and all those kinds of things. And it really took the industry in a completely different direction. And just to like take over your podcast of me interviewing you for a second, it's like I remember the first time I was asked to go to VO Atlanta and to teach at VO Atlanta, and it was like 2017, I think. And I had this thought in my head of like, oh, I'm a professional voice actor from Los Angeles, and I'm going to come in and teach all these plebes, sort of everything I know, and I joke about it, but I did have this kind of thing like, well, okay, I'm being asked because I'm an expert, and so I'm going to share what I know. But I came away with the sense of like, wow, okay, Bess, like, wait, I really got reoriented
There's a
because,
whole other industry outside of the industry
oh
that
my
you knew,
God,
right? And I've said that all
yes,
along. I'm like, LA, and this is not a knock on LA. LA is a bubble.
it's
They
a
live in a
bubble.
bubble and they don't
Totally.
understand what is going on in the rest of the world. It makes me think so much of when the music industry started facing things like Napster and digital
Yes.
downloads, and the
Yeah.
music industry went into full-blown panic mode.
Yeah. Totally.
And the
Totally.
solution for the music industry, one of the first solutions was, let's start suing individuals. Let's go
Right.
find Bob from down the street who downloaded a song and let's sue him. And if we sue enough individuals and scare the crap out of enough individuals,
This will all
then
stop.
they'll
Yeah.
stop and they'll start buying CDs again. It was just so stupid, like just the exact wrong approach.
Yeah.
And I kind of felt like, and I'm not in the union, and I'm in Canada, so I'm outside of it. So I was looking at it from the outside down, and I'm like, I'm not convinced that the way that you guys are approaching this right now is going to be the
Yeah.
solution that you're looking
Yeah.
for. Like,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
that's the music industry figured it out eventually, right? They figured out how to live in a digital world, and maybe it was Steve Jobs creating the iPod in the iTunes store or whatever it was, but they found a way, and now music sales have far surpassed what they were at the peak of CD sales. And so the music industry took them a minute to get there, but they adapted and
Yeah.
they figured
Yeah.
it out. And
Yeah.
I sometimes think the union should maybe could learn a lesson from.
It
Not
drives
that I
me
want to go on a
insane.
rant about the union, but
No, well, the thing I wanted to say about that VO Atlanta trip was that I came home really having been schooled
Yeah.
about not just about what the business was like, but about what kind of people were doing voiceover and the particular skills that they possessed, and the sheer tenacity and entrepreneurship.
Yep.
Right? There were so many people there who make so much more money than I do. Like it was this eye-opening experience, and it wasn't a knock on me and my way in the career, or any kind of like, well, they shouldn't be doing that work because there's so much of it that's not. I didn't feel that way at all. I just felt like my mind got expanded
Wow.
about
Yeah.
about
Look
what
at this.
people are doing, and what's out there.
Yep.
And really, if you want a career, there are all these things that you can take advantage of to move yourself along, right? Assuming you have talent and the right disposition for a career like this, right? Let's assume those are there. But man, it was like I just left there thinking, wow, okay, Bess, you have so much to learn, and it was really great. Like it was a really great experience. But
I think that's the beauty of this whole thing, though, because if you look at you and me, our careers, our trajectories are polar opposites.
yeah,
Like the way that I've done it and the way that you've done it are completely polar opposite, but both worked.
yeah, exactly.
And
Exactly.
that's the thing that I think is really cool about it. And I tell people all the time, yeah, I teach a particular way, but
Yeah, right.
I also say over and over and over again, there's no one right way
Right.
to do this. You find
Yeah.
the way that works for you. And so for somebody who wants to go to LA and follow that path and wait some tables and go to some auditions and get the agent and ultimately land the job, like that is still a viable option.
Yeah.
For somebody like me who lives in a small town in the middle of nowhere in Canada, who just wants to make some money and take care of his family, there's a different way to do it, which is also a viable option. And so
Yeah.
all of the different aspects can play together and work together in different ways. And I think that's part of what makes the industry so cool.
Yeah, and a very, very interesting one. I do have to say, from my vantage point, that I feel like the avenues that you've taken and the trajectory that you're on, is the new way. I must say that. Like I really believe that. I think that the industry itself and the union itself are going through all kinds of upheaval. And, again, 80 to 90% of commercial work is non-union. That's not a viable way, not in the same way that I did it. It's not. I mean, I came from the days when if you got 2 national network commercials in a year, you were set.
Yep.
Like you didn't, and you set well.
Yep.
And that doesn't exist anymore, as far as I can tell.
No.
And if it does, it's for extraordinarily, people breathing extraordinarily rarefied air. It's not as common as it was, back when
Yep.
I started. But it does lead me, like, do you work with any agents?
I do. I have 3 agents who are responsible for about 1% of my annual income.
Okay. That's
and
super
that might even be
interesting.
generous.
Yeah.
And that's not a knock on my agents, just to be clear. I know where my skill set is at as a voice actor. I know what I bring to the table as a voice actor. So I've got agents that have given me a shot. I would say at least 2 out of the 3 gave me a shot just because of the status that I had built for myself in the industry. So regardless of whether or not I was a good voice actor or not, they give me the opportunity. I book a job here and there, and great. Not big, sexy. You're probably not going to hear me on a Super Bowl commercial. But it's just that for me, it's another income stream.
Yeah.
So if you're talking from an entrepreneurial standpoint, I'm like, I need money coming in. I got 4 daughters. Okay. They are all going to want to go to college one day. It's going to cost me $1 billion. I got to have money coming in from so many different places. And so I'm just looking at that's how I see it. I'm like, where do I get access to more auditions, more opportunities? Where can I build another income stream?
So what does it mean to you to be an entrepreneur? What does that mean? That's a super huge general question, but
freedom and flexibility. That's ultimately what it came down to. My last couple years that I worked in radio. So the second to last station that I was at, most of the people that were in the building there, most of the announcers that were in the building there had been there for 30 plus years. And every one of them had 6 weeks of vacation every year. And so because I was the new guy, my first responsibility was filling in for all the other guys when they went on vacation. And so vacation for me, for three years that I was at that station, I think vacation for me would look like my boss would show up on a random Friday in like November and say, just take next week off. That'll be your vacation.
Good. That's good planning, right?
Yeah. It makes it so easy to do something, because I definitely want to go, camping in November in Canada. That's a great idea. And it used to anger me. Like, it used to just drive me nuts. And it wasn't so much that I was mad. Like, I understood why, right? These guys have been there for 30 years. They, give them their 6 weeks. Great. I felt like maybe there was a better way that they could run the system, so to speak, make it a little bit more equitable to, so I could at least plan a little bit. But it used to just drive me insane. And then the last station that I was at, it was not uncommon for the boss to come in on Friday and be like, hey, we sales just booked a remote on Saturday and we need you to be at such and such. And, I've already made plans because I'm supposed to have the weekends off. I'm the Monday to Friday drive guy. But then, Friday afternoon, the boss is like, I need you at a remote on Saturday from 10 to 2 or whatever. And so boom, there goes your weekend plans. Right. And it just used to make me crazy. And I think for me, a big part of it, and maybe it's not a good enough motivator, but for me it was, but a big part of it was, I just want to be in control of my schedule. I'm a really easygoing guy. There are very few things that will set me off, but if you start dinking around with my time, I will get cranky sometimes.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to build a situation for myself where I got the final say.
Yeah.
Nobody was telling me at the last minute, you're going to do this or whatever. I can work as many hours as I want. I can work 7 days a week, 18 hours a day if I want. Or I can not work next week. And that's fine too.
Yeah.
That was what entrepreneurship gave me. It gave me the ability to decide, look, with radio, my income was never going to rise above a certain point. My vacation time was never going to rise above a certain point. The control of my time was never really truly going to be mine. And I those were all the things that I knew entrepreneurship would give me. I can make as much money as I want or as little money as I want based on how hard I'm willing to work or not willing to work. I can decide who I want to work with or don't want to work with. And I can have complete freedom and flexibility and control of my schedule, which it can be a blessing or a curse, because the other side of that is, I think from a very young age, whether we realize it or not, most of us are trained to be employees, not employers. And so you give the wrong person that kind of flexibility and they're never going to do anything. And I think and this is not a knock on voiceovers, but voice actors tend to operate from the creative side of their brain, not the business side of their brain.
Absolutely.
And it's where they struggle.
Yes.
It's where they struggle. I mean, it's one of the things that I help people with the most. I don't know what I'm supposed to do. I don't know what my day is supposed to look like. I don't know what are my priorities and all of that sort of stuff. And so when you give them the flexibility, but they don't have parameters to play within.
Yeah, and the discipline of it too.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah. Well, this is great, because I was just going to ask you, like, so let's say I come to you. I'll come to you as I am. All right. I've had experience in voiceover from the agent, the agent directed method, of getting audition opportunity. And the business has changed, and I'm not getting as much, and there are more people in the business, and so my percentages are going down. I used to book 1 in 10. Now I book 1 in 250. My income's down. I'm not sure what to do. And you've been recommended to me to teach me about how to find my own clients. What does that look like when I come to you? What does your coaching look like?
One of the first things that I talk with people about is I try to set some realistic expectations, first of all, because what I teach works, but what I teach is not fast. It takes time to build a business, period. Are there guys out there that, offer, 6 months to 6 figures or whatever catchy slogan it is that they've come up with? Sure. But that's not the reality for, can it happen? Yes, it can happen. There are unicorns in the business world. Is it every business? No, it is not. It is not every business. So I think the first thing is setting some realistic expectations. I think the other thing that I talk with voice actors, particularly the voice actor that you're describing, one of the first conversations I have, which is one of the most uncomfortable conversations I have, is what are you doing to stay current in 2024?
Do you mean that from do you mean that from like a read standpoint?
Yeah. And this is a struggle that I have been through at multiple points in my career. My guess is you've probably been there too.
For sure.
You find something that works,
mm-hmm.
and you do that thing that works, and you do that thing that works really well, and you make a lot of money, but then slowly over time, something shifts.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what shifted was what was booking shifted away from you.
Yes.
The thing that you did really well that booked and made you a lot of money for a year or 2 years or 5 years, that's not what the marketplace is looking for anymore. And so if you are still trying to do that thing that you did really well, and you're not trying to find a way to adapt, then it doesn't matter what you do. You're not going to book. And I've been there. I've lived through several of those transitions. I've been in the game long enough, and it's a really crappy, uncomfortable, kind of a piss off when it happens, because you're like, no, you don't understand. Like I made this much money last year. What's going on, or whatever? And it's like, what's going on is the industry moved away from you, and you didn't follow. You didn't follow.
Yeah.
And I think COVID was actually 2020 was probably one of the best examples of that in a short period of time, because when we were in the major throes of the pandemic, everybody wanted like the warm, caring mom read. And if you could do the warm, caring mom read, you were going to have the best year of your career that you have ever had.
Yeah.
Period. Hands down. And I know some people who did it, just freaking made bank, because for that year, they were what every single casting spec, casting director, agent, client, name it, that's what they wanted.
Totally.
But then as we started to come out of the pandemic, you get later into 21, different states have opened up, different restrictions have started to lift, where we're trying to be a little bit more optimistic or whatever. And it shifted. And they're like, well, what the heck? I made so much money last year. I'm like, yeah, but that's not what's booking now. And so are you staying current? And I think that's a really uncomfortable conversation that any established voice actor has to have with themselves at multiple points throughout their career. And I've been there and had to do it. And I think what makes it even more uncomfortable, particularly if you're someone of note, is there's an expectation. I'll use myself as an example. I've always said all along, I'm not the greatest voice actor that's out there, but I will out hustle you. And that's how I've made my money, is because I will out hustle you. But because everybody knows me, there's an expectation that I'm this really great voice actor. And so then when I call up a coach, it's like the coach doesn't understand. What do you mean? I'm like, well, I'm not actually that good. I can just out hustle you. And so it becomes really awkward, right? Like I don't want to admit to somebody that I'm not that good, or I don't want a coach who who has this image of where I'm at. And then all of a sudden they're like, oh, well, that guy's a fraud. Like, and I'm telling you straight up, like, okay, this is me being authentic. Like, I'm not just making this up. Like, this is the stuff that goes through my head. I don't want people to think that I'm a fraud or whatever. But the problem is, if you don't face that,
yes,
then you're not going to pick up whatever the trend. I don't know what's going to book in 2025. Right. I don't know what that trend is, but I better be able to figure it out and find a coach that I can work with who will help me get there. Otherwise it won't matter. So that's one part of your question is I've talked before. I did a presentation actually a couple years ago at a conference that talked about the 5 most important goals for your voiceover business, and the one word that will kill it all. And the one word that will kill it all is complacency.
Yeah.
It's when you get to a point where you've achieved your goals, but then you stop doing all of the things that you did that got you to that point in the first place. And you stop working with coaches, you stop doing your marketing, you stop like all that stuff. And that's where you lose it.
Yeah. And if you can't, this is where it is extraordinarily important to engage your humility. We have to be able to admit the things that we're not doing well. There's nothing like asking for and receiving critical feedback on what you're doing and getting an answer of, yeah, it was just okay. It wasn't that great, And
what's even worse than that is when they tell you did, oh, that was great. Because they don't want to hurt your feelings, because they know who you are, because they're like, well, that's Mark.
Yeah.
No, don't look me in my face and tell me that I freaking suck. Like, I would so much respect you so much more.
There's so much possibility on the other side of that.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
It's like, that's the stuff that can actually shift your life and your career. Yep. And we, the ones receiving the constructive criticism, and it is constructive, it is, if you allow it to be, it is, and it will change you. That's what we have to be willing to hear and adjust to. Otherwise, hang it up. What's the point? Yep. You want to be told how great you were for the things that you did 10 years ago? Who cares? Who cares? So what am I doing now? And does it measure up? And to get the answer of, no, it actually doesn't measure up. And that's why you're not getting cast. You go, wow, okay, let me take that on as real. And now what's my response to it? How do I then get better? Right. I totally agree. So
vinyl came back. Bell bottoms came back. They call them flares now. They rebranded them, but they came back. One of these days, the announcer read is going to come back, and I'm going to dominate all.
Yeah.
I'm going to make all the money for however long that trend lasts, 6 months, a year, whatever it is. I'm just going to make all the freaking money, because I'm just waiting for that to come back, because that's what I do really well. But
that's the right
that's
attitude.
Also not a great strategy for building a sustainable business over time, and having a wife and 4 kids that need you to financially support them. And so in between waiting for the announcer read to come back, if and when that ever happens, I got to adapt along the way. But
adapt.
I think that also applies on the marketing side. What did you do before that worked? Does that thing still work?
So what do you tell people who have never done marketing? It's completely brand new. Those are the people that come to me and go, I don't know how to send an email, and I don't know how to find a lead, and who am I contacting? And, or I get stuff like, well, I sent them an email and I never heard anything back, so I guess that's done. So that's beginner stuff. That's like, don't understand marketing stuff. So
the number one thing is shifting your narrative around marketing. so much of this is the story that we tell ourselves about marketing. And so if you tell yourself every day, I'm not a good marketer, I don't know how to market, I don't know what I'm doing, then guess what you're going to do? You're going to create a self-fulfilling prophecy, which will be exactly what becomes true. I think the other thing is that the second most common narrative around it is, I don't want to be annoying, I don't want to be pushy, I don't want to be salesy, I don't want to upset people. And so every story that we tell ourselves on the subject of marketing, generally speaking, is a negative story. Is it any wonder that we don't get excited to do it? Is it any wonder that we procrastinate on it? Is it any wonder that we find another excuse? Is it any wonder that we throw more money at another online casting site in hopes that that's the solution, or pile 6 more agents onto the roster of agents that we're already represented by, because we're trying to avoid the negative stories that we have around marketing?
Yeah.
And my whole thing is, what I have to offer is of value to a certain group of people. So my job is to find those people and offer them the value.
Simple as that.
But it changes your entire perspective at this point.
Yeah.
If your toilet explodes and a plumber calls you, are you mad at the plumber for soliciting the job? Or are you like, thank God my
Relieved.
toilet exploded, come fix my toilet?
Yeah.
It's the context that makes the difference. And so if I'm marketing myself as a voice actor to companies, to people, to individuals who would never use voiceover, or have never used voiceover, or have no concept of voiceover, then I'm wasting my time, I'm wasting their time, I'm annoying them, I'm coming across as salesy and useless. On the flip side, if I'm connecting with production companies who are working with voice actors on a weekly basis, and I offer them a service of value that can, I'm going to make your life a little bit easier. I'm available for your directed sessions. My audio is on point. I'm really easy to work with, whatever. I just made their life easier, because maybe they don't want to go to an online casting site and post an audition and then have to sit through 200 or 150 or whatever submissions from voice actors, 80% of which are not good in the first place. Maybe they would rather just have 6 or 10 or 12 voice actors on their roster that they can turn to, that they're the go-tos. And so when I'm reaching out to those people, I'm actually making their life easier. And so I think that's part of it, is shifting your perspective on it. And then the other thing is recognizing that this does not happen instantly. Have you ever looked at something on Amazon that has followed you around the internet for the next month? Like,
For sure.
you open Facebook and there's an ad for that thing that you looked at on Amazon.
Yeah.
And you went into Google and there's a Google ad for that thing that you saw on Amazon. We get followed around. There's a reason for that. It's because we need to be told more than once
To buy that thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you see that thing enough times, eventually, if you really want that thing, you're going to buy that thing.
Yeah.
When you're building these relationships with these people, there are production companies that produce 500 videos in a year. And there are production companies that produce 5 videos in a year. And you don't know which one they are. And you don't know what kind of videos they're producing. Maybe this month, everybody's asking for Spanish. Or maybe this month, everybody's asking for male, not female. Or maybe they're asking for female, not male. You don't know what's going on at the time. So just because they didn't reach out to you and offer you a job on the first email that you sent, it doesn't mean that they didn't like you, or that your voice was terrible, or that you suck at what you do. It just means right now, you don't match the specs.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what I want to do is I want to stay top of mind with them until there comes a point where I do match the specs. That job comes in and they need that guy that looks and sounds just like me. And they're like, hey, Mark just emailed us the other day. Just send him the audition, see if he can submit for us. That's what I'm going for. And so in one of my marketing classes, I actually shared a screenshot once from my inbox of 9 years of continuous communication with a client before they booked me for the first job.
Wow.
Which is ridiculous, right? They're not all like that. But how many people, how many voice actors, if they're being honest with themselves, would continue having conversations with the client for 9 years without ever booking a job?
Yeah.
But what does it cost me to send that guy an email every once in a while? It costs me
Yeah.
60 seconds of my time.
Yeah. Yeah.
But if eventually he hires me and I make $10,000 worth of income off of him from voiceovers, when he, finally does start to hire me, all of a sudden, sending a few emails over the years doesn't seem like such a bad trade-off.
Right.
And so I think that's the other side of this. We give up too soon. We give up too easy. One email is generally not going to get it done.
Yeah. It's, it's akin to at this particularly low point in my career, when I was sort of asking myself the question, am I gonna find another way to make a living, or am I gonna find a new, more minds to dig into,
Yep.
and I opted for the second, and that's when I ventured into animation and video games. But it took 4 years of auditioning, several hundred
Yep.
animation auditions a year. There's a lot of auditions.
Most people won't do that.
They won't do it.
And that's what separates, look, I hate to say it, but that's what separates winners from losers. It's bottom line.
So is it the same? So here's often what I tell my clients in terms of auditioning, right? That the audition itself has to be the thing, that you are in love with, right? You cannot, the work, that's the work, and it has to be satisfying unto itself. It must be, or you'll lose your mind. And is it kind of the same in terms of marketing and the communication, with clients and potential clients, that's a piece of it that you really must learn to love? Do you know what I'm saying? That the conversation itself matters, right? I guess that's what I'm after, the process, right? As opposed to the end result,
Whether you learn to love it, I mean, I guess that ideally,
love may be a strong word.
it would make it more enjoyable, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But you do have to accept it.
Okay,
you do have to accept that is part of the job. Look, I want to be in the booth. I want to record.
Sure,
I want to send invoices. I want to cash checks.
Yes,
but in order to get there, it's 400 auditions that you talked about, or it's emailing 500 people, or it's a year's worth of consistent social media, or whatever that thing is. That's what's going to get you there. And so whether you love it or like it or hate it or whatever, it doesn't really matter. That's the job. And so, the booking and the cashed check is just the payoff.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. That's exactly right. Yeah. Let's see. Run me through your day. What does your day look like? Like a productive day, a day where you're like, I am on my game today, right? Because I know you may approach a day and go like, yeah, I'm gonna go lie in the sun.
I don't know that there is I get asked that a lot, and what does your day look like? And for me now, the reality is that no 2 days look the same. But a good day for me is, did I talk to some people who were already in my database? Did I add somebody new into my database? And did I serve some of the people that I already have a relationship with? And that's kind of the measuring stick now. And so for me, it's reach out to a couple new leads, follow up with a couple of existing leads, nurture relationships with a couple of clients. If I can do that every day in some capacity, then I feel like I'm moving in the right direction. And some days it's easier said than done, because I got bookings, I've got marketing, I've got coaching, I've got 4 kids. Like, there's a lot going on. Some days are chaos. But I think really in its most simplistic form, that's where it's at. And I think what that looks like, though, is different for different people at different stages of their career.
Yeah.
And so I talk very openly about how in the beginning, and I was in the fortunate position, if you will, of being a single guy at the time that when I went full time in voiceover, I was single and I was a complete hermit and I had no social life. And so I had nothing else to do but work on growing my business. And so I spent for 2 years, I mean, I was full time, 7 days a week, because I didn't have anything else to do. I
Right.
really didn't have anything else to do. And so, yeah, I was contacting 20 people a day, 25 people a day, 30 people a day. Like I was just going nuts because I had nothing else to do. There got to a point where I didn't have to do that anymore. Like now, if I can put 5 new leads in my database every week, I feel like I'm winning.
Yeah.
Like that's good. I've made it to that point where I don't have to work at the same level. And so I think that's, I can say, in its most simplistic form, did I put some new people in? Did I follow up with some people I previously connected with? And did I nurture some people that I've previously worked with? That's in its most simplistic form. But what that looks like is that 5 people, 10 people, 20 people, depends on where you're at in your journey and what you're trying to accomplish as well. Like there's a big difference between somebody starting out in their career who is working their way towards retirement, wants to have a little bit of extra income, really needs a creative outlet, don't need to make 6 figures, just want to make, if I can add an extra 30 or 35 on top of my pension, I'm good to go. That's a very different value proposition from somebody who's 25 and wants to make 6 figures and wants to get there so they can buy a house and get married and, take care of a family.
Yeah.
2 totally different scenarios that require 2 totally different approaches.
Yeah. Do you have any particular apps that you find are helpful to you in the day-to-day running of your business?
My CRM is probably my biggest one because that is just kind of the organizational extension of my brain.
Okay.
That's where I can go into my CRM on any given day at any given moment and have a pretty good overview of here's who I need to contact. Here's who I haven't reached out to in a while. Here's where I'm at as far as the nurture cycle of this new lead, or, this is the next step that I have to take or whatever. Cause there's no way that I can remember that by looking at my inbox or looking at a spreadsheet or whatever. So my CRM really, it keeps me organized and partly it creates accountability.
So for those who are super beginners, what does CRM stand for?
Customer relationship management, and it is software that you use to put you put all your contacts in, and then you use it to organize your contacts. So I can look at any single person in my CRM right now. I can see the last conversation we had. I can see when that conversation happened. I can see when I should be reaching out to them again based on the parameters that I've set for how often I want to be in contact. I can get access to their social media profiles or their mailing address or their telephone number or whatever. If I've put all that information in, I can track auditions or jobs if I'm working on something with them or whatever. And so it gives me everything, but then it also gives me the ability to do really targeted marketing because I can go into my CRM and I can pull up everybody in my CRM who I've tagged for commercial. And then I can narrow that down even further to every client that I've ever worked with for commercial. And I could send a very targeted marketing message to that group of clients that I've done commercial with before. Then I could go back and I could pick up everybody that's in my database who is a commercial prospect. So somebody who's expressed an interest, but hasn't worked with me yet. I could write an entirely different message to them because our relationship is different and do a very targeted marketing campaign to them. And so that's what your CRM gives you, is it gives you database management. It gives you the ability to do some really targeted strategic marketing. And again, it's accountability. A lot of it is accountability because it will tell me it's time to get in touch with so-and-so again so that I don't forget, because I will forget.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's great. Are there any in particular that you like? Any specific?
I use Nimble, and I've been using Nimble since about 2016. I've played around with a bunch of different CRMs. That was the one that I kind of settled on back in the day and just kind of stuck with it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because changing CRMs is a nightmare too.
Whew,
But
I can
honestly,
imagine.
the most important thing is that you find one that you can make work for you. And most of them do the same things and work in the same way. You know, maybe they got slightly different bells and whistles or whatever, but by and large, most of them are kind of do the same thing.
Yeah. Yeah. I do. I use it's not a CRM. I don't know. Who knows? Maybe in some fashion it is, but I don't use it that way. But I use Kajabi for my mail emails and stuff
There
like
is
that.
an element of CRM built into Kajabi. I
Yeah,
use that platform as well.
it
So
drives me crazy though. I don't find it very user friendly, and so I'm always like, oh, I should just get another. And I'm like, really? You're gonna start over with another one, because the other one is not going to be all the things that you wish that it would be. And so you do, again, you kind of have to accept. It's like, okay, here's the one that I that I
yep,
signed up for,
make it work
and
for you.
I'm gonna make it work. Yeah, for sure. Um, what kind of coaching do you offer?
I am just a marketing guy. I stay in
Okay.
my lane. I have people that reach out all the time and ask me, will you listen to my demos, or will you, do you coach for this or do you coach for that or whatever? And I'm like, look, I save that for people who are so much more smarter and qualified than I am. So I am just a marketing guy. I will work with
Okay.
you on any aspect of marketing and on the business side as well. Although, and you probably would relate to this too. I tell my wife every once in a while that sometimes I don't just feel like a coach, but I actually feel like a therapist. There definitely seems to
Totally.
be, no matter what whether you're teaching commercial or email marketing or,
Yeah.
business basics or whatever, somehow it always ends up that there's an element of therapy that comes into the mix as well. And so I've told her before, I'm like, maybe I should go back to school and, like get a certification or something. Like, I don't want to screw anybody up. So
No, no, I know. I feel the same. And then there are times where I'm like, uh-oh, like this is going off into like, I can't help, because I'm not a therapist,
yeah,
and then it feels a little dangerous, like I can't, there's a line
I
you
am not
cannot
equipped for
cross, what
this.
I mean? Like, I'm not, yeah,
Yeah.
not at all. Um, and I'd like to think that I can say a few, nice and helpful things, and that'll be that, like,
My
and
favorite
that'll
is
be good.
I've had this happen a couple of times where I've, had a breakthrough with somebody in some capacity. They're like, man, that was so good. Like, that was better than my therapist. I can't wait to share this with my therapist. I'm like, no, 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 no. Don't don't tell your therapist that some random guy you found on the internet because he has a YouTube channel is like giving you
Giving you personal advice, and yeah. so with your coaching, it's marketing. Do you offer courses that people can go and work on themselves? Do you do one-on-one coaching? Do you group coaching? What kinds of stuff?
Actually, I kind of, in some senses, I do all of those things. So I definitely have some courses that are available anytime that are just video courses that you can sign up and watch at your leisure. I do one-on-one coaching for people. Some people just learn better that way. And I get
Sure,
that.
yeah.
Or they've got very specific things that they want to work through. And so then
Mhm.
it's perfect. Book an hour, we jump on a call, work through those things. And every once in a while, I do some small group sessions for working. Like I do email workshops, for example, that are available to 10 people, and we kind of work
Yeah,
through
yeah.
email marketing, writing your initial email or whatever. So I try to, one of the things that I actually did years ago, I was on the fire department and I was trying to become, one of my goals on the fire department was to be a training officer. And so I did a lot of post-secondary training and teaching the adult learner. And I guess some of that has carried through into my coaching, because then I'm able to, I recognize that different people learn in different ways and respond to different types of
Sure.
teaching or whatever. And so I
Absolutely.
try to offer something for everyone. Hopefully there's something in there that will meet, your specific learning style or whatever.
If you could do anything else in life other than being a voice actor and a VOpreneur, what would you do?
What would I do? I'm trying to buy a farm, although I don't specifically want to
Oh,
be a farmer. I think I probably have more interest in being a doomsday prepper than I have in being a farmer, but I think that's just a byproduct of the current political climates that we live in North America. But I definitely would love to be able to cruise around on a tractor, have a tractor, and I said I'm going to buy a tractor that's got a front end loader and a backhoe, just so I can just dig random holes on my property just for the sake of being able to dig random holes in my property. So maybe that, but I'll tell you, I have been working very diligently for the last couple of years on starting to learn more about investing and stock markets and financial planning and things of that nature. And I've thought about actually taking some post-secondary school for some night school classes or something like that in the financial and retirement planning and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But I think
Yeah.
that's probably more for me. I don't know
Sure.
that I would ever want to be responsible for anybody else's money. I think that would be too much pressure.
That's
But it is,
terrifying to
yeah,
me.
it's something that I have become. It's funny. I think about how when I was younger, you know, when the iPhone first came out and it forced you to have the stock ticker app on your phone, and everybody would move that stock ticker app to like a junk folder on their phone because you couldn't delete it. And now, like the first 3 apps on the main screen of my phone are all stock market related stock tickers. I'm like, man, how the times have changed. But so I think probably it would be, I
Might
don't
be a
want to be a
different person.
banker or Wall Street guy or anything like that, but maybe
Yeah.
something in the financial planning or something like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. I've been really into shifting up my nutrition these days, and I'm a rabbit holer, man. I kind of dive deep, and
Mhm.
so everybody around me is like, okay, can you stop talking about steak? You know, can you
It's kind of
talk
how my
about,
wife is when I
you
come
know what I mean?
upstairs and tell her about the latest trade, and you could just see she's like, did we make money or did we lose money? And if we lost money, then she doesn't want to hear about it anymore.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And I sometimes think that I want to go, when I retire from voiceover, that I want to, I want to become like a nutritionist in some way. And I want to, I want to coach diet, and, and then I'm like, really? Do you really want to do that? Like, do you really want to delve into people's health? Which is huge. It's such a huge thing.
You
So
better
yeah.
take some side courses in therapy at the same time,
Oh
then,
my
because I
God,
think
yeah.
those two things are very, very interconnected.
Yeah, and get some liability insurance too, But I think in the same way, like, yeah, I just really am interested in it for myself, right? But I just want to proselytize. That's really what I want to do. I want to tell people what to do.
there is a part of me that is just there's a lifelong learner, curiosity mentality there. Like I spend probably 2 or 3 hours a day reading. I'm not a Netflix guy or an Amazon Prime guy. Like I will sit in my office and read until 2:00 in the morning. I think that's one of the reasons why I love e-learning so much, is because I get these courses that are on like who knows what. And lots of times I just find it, I'm like, they're paying me to learn this stuff. And half of it, am I ever going to use in my life? No, of course not. But it's still fascinating to learn. And so I think there's just an element of curiosity, because I think the same thing. I'm like, what am I going to do? I'm probably not going to be able to do this for another 30 years. And so what is the next thing? Because I'm also not, I don't think I'm equipped for a retirement where I just sit around and do nothing. Like I think I have something going on, but yeah.
Yeah. Something that you said that I feel like is a really important piece of any kind of business or any kind of good life, frankly, and that is having a sense of curiosity, and the fact that you read and you want to know things, right, and you want to keep kind of expanding. And I heard somebody say that the opposite of fear is curiosity. That we either say no to something because we don't understand it, and we don't like it, and we want to separate ourselves from it because it's too frightening, or we can do the opposite, which is to say, what is that about, and what do you know, and teach me, so that I'll no longer be afraid of the thing, and I feel like that it is a big piece of the approach to a career, certainly a career in voiceover. What don't I know?
Yep.
And am I interested enough to know it? And if I'm not interested enough to know it, then I shouldn't do it. I just shouldn't do it. You have to have a curiosity about it, So that's pretty cool. I love that you are a reader.
That's how I ended up coaching. It was never an intentional journey. It was, I want to be able to grow my business. I want to be able to make more money. There's got to be places to get voiceover outside of online casting. I got to figure out how this works. So that started a journey on studying entrepreneurship, studying sales, studying marketing, books, podcasts. I took some community college courses, things of that nature. And part of how I learn is by just reinforcing the lessons that I'm picking up along the way. So I blogged 5 days a week for years. And my blogs were literally just the things that I was learning. And I wasn't really writing them for anybody other than myself, just to reinforce the things that I was learning. But ultimately, people read the blogs and then eventually think you're an expert, and then they want to talk to you and they want to work with you. And so it just became a natural extension. But that was, I say that all the time though. Everything that I post in the VOpreneur group, and it's funny because you'll post I'll share something and somebody be like, oh my gosh, that was directed straight at me, or, how do you peer so deeply into my soul or whatever. I'm like, no. Everything that I post in that group is usually myself coaching myself, but I just know that there's somebody else out there who is going to benefit from whatever this thing is that I'm saying today, whatever this lesson is that I've probably learned the hard way, or, because I didn't do something I should have done or didn't do it enough or whatever. And so much of it is just mostly just me talking to myself to reinforce the things.
All right. I have 3 more questions for you.
Okay.
And they kind of don't have anything to do with voiceover.
Okay.
What is the bravest thing you've ever done?
The bravest thing that I've ever done. When I got married, my wife had 2 daughters, and they were 3 and 8 when I came into their lives. I don't know if it's the bravest thing I've ever done. It was definitely the most intimidating thing that I've ever done, because for anybody who's ever been a step parent or is a child with step parents or whatever, that dynamic can go in a lot of different ways. And so I made the decision from the very beginning that they were my daughters, and they've only ever been my daughters. Like, the word step has never existed in this house, and their dad is still in their life. And so I'm not trying to take anything away, but I just never looked at them as anything other than my daughters. There was probably, for me, there was an element of bravery in that, just because I was the guy who was convinced that he was never going to have kids. I just didn't feel like I was equipped.
Yeah.
And so
then I'd say that is a big act of bravery.
So to take that and do that, and then ultimately add 2 more, then we kind of transition from bravery to insanity, maybe a little bit, but still no regrets.
That's fantastic. That is great. The second question is, how would you like to be remembered?
I'm a servant at heart. And I think there is evidence of that throughout my life. I think 17 years on the fire department was just pure service. I can't help myself. It's just my natural inclination. And so I'm hoping that I will be remembered more for the things that I did for other people than for anything that I may have done or accomplished on my own.
Right on. Beautiful. How can people find you? I know we're on your platform.
On the Everyday VOpreneur podcast with K Bess.
On the Everyday VOpreneur podcast.
On the podcast. I'm on the podcast. I'm on YouTube. VOpreneur.com is the website.
VOpreneur.com.
I'm everywhere. You can't miss me. Okay. That's what people tell me anyway. They're like, you're always popping up in my feed.
And are you on Insta? Are you Facebook? I know, because I'm a member of that group of VOpreneur.
I have all of the platforms. I've got Instagram, Facebook. I am one of the few who still use X, Twitter.
Yeah, me too.
Whatever.
LinkedIn. You don't want to go there for me, though. You don't want to go. It's not good. Now, oh my God. I'm going to get people. It's good. I use a pseudonym. Not really.
I fully admit that I delete more posts than I ever actually share. In my age, I have gotten much better at self-editing.
I'm getting worse. I have to say, I'm getting much worse. But okay, that is fantastic. Is there any last thing that you want to say? I know we've been going just about an hour. So I just want to be mindful of your time and your listeners' time.
I just really think that at the end of the day, so much of what we're trying to accomplish here boils down to story in so many different ways. And it's the stories that we tell ourselves. It's the stories that we tell others. It's the stories that we believe are true. And I'm talking mindset at this point.
Mm-hmm.
Whether you tell yourself a positive story or a negative story, there's a difference between saying, I have to go audition and I get to go audition. There's a difference in that story and in how you perceive that story. And whether you realize it or not, you carry that into everything that you do. And so if your stories are negative stories, you're going to carry that. That is going to come through in the energy that you put out, whether that is in your emails or your auditions or your social media posts or whatever. And if you are telling yourself positive stories and coming from that perspective, and I'm not saying that life is all sunshine and rainbows, but I'm saying that we get to choose how we respond. And we get to choose the story that we tell ourselves for how we respond. And it's, you can be a victim and that's hard, or you can be an overcomer and that's hard. So choose your hard.
Yeah.
Which story would you rather tell yourself? And so I think more often than not in the coaching sessions that I do with voice actors, usually a big part of it is just trying to get them to rewrite their stories that they're telling.
Yeah, that's fantastic. That's great. Marc Scott, thank you so much for letting me on your podcast to interview you.
You're really good at this. I might actually be talking to you now and be like, I'm just going to flip you the episodes for 6 months out of the year and be like, here, you just take the podcast and roll with it. You do a better job at it than I do. You're great with your interviews.
Oh, thank you. I enjoy it so much. It does remind me that the name of my business, my coaching business is Trust and Be Brave. And it came out of a keynote that I gave.
Mm-hmm.
And
I remember. I was there.
You were there? Oh my gosh. Oh my goodness. Well, I was trying to figure out what to name my coaching group, and somebody responded in a comment on Facebook and said, "Trust and Be Brave." Duh. And I was like, really?
It's like the perfect mantra. You have no idea. Or maybe you do now, but it legitimately, it is like the perfect mantra.
Well,
if you wake up in the morning and just told yourself before you came downstairs into the office or got into the booth to just trust and be brave, if you just did that, you would have a better day and a better session.
You have a better day. Yeah. I guess I sometimes think of it as being sort of cheesy, but I have to let go of it. I'm, so all that is to say that I did this podcast years ago, where I interviewed women, in voiceover. And then I thought of doing another podcast that really didn't have anything to do with voiceover, that was really along the lines of just everyday bravery. Right? How are people brave every single day? Sometimes it's an act of bravery to step outside of your house and go get the mail. Mm-hmm. It depends upon where you are in your life and what's going on, So I had started all these questions, for the podcast, right? And I searched them and I was like, oh, I forgot about that, which is where those two came from. What's the bravest thing you've ever done, and how would you like to be remembered?
Well, know that a big part of what I do is encouraging voice actors to do the thing and creating the accountability to make them do the thing. And so obviously this is staying in the interview now. Okay. And that is going to go out now. And so people will be waiting for this new show to come. And that's how I just now successfully created accountability for you to go and do the thing. Because I think there are some very important stories that could be told that could be inspiring and encouraging to a lot of different people. And I think you're a good person to do it.
Thank you. That's so kind of you. Are you familiar with the series, The Chosen? Are you familiar with it?
I've heard of it.
So it's the story of the Gospels, right?
Okay.
And it's, I'm a preacher's kid, right? And so I'm I'm a little cynical about we're going to do another thing about Jesus, are we? I'm just I'm a little cynical, but I watched it because I had met a couple of the people who produced it, and I was like, okay, well, I'll see what it's like. So I watched it, and like after the first couple seasons of the first, the first couple of episodes of the first season, I was like a mess. I mean, I just thought it was so good, and I loved the guy who played Jesus. I just thought he was great. And then someone said to me, hey, the actor who plays Jesus, he has an interview on blah, 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 and I'm like, oh, I should go watch that interview. Jonathan Rumi is his name. And then I started doing like, oh my God, I don't know this actor. I don't know him, and I don't want to because he's Jesus, and I need for him to stay Jesus. He can't be an actor,
Right.
And then I was like looking through Atlas's roster because I was trying to see like how many people, what do they have? And I'm like, oh my God, Jonathan Rumi is a voiceover client at Atlas. And I'm like, I'm on the same roster as Jesus. Like,
No
wow.
pressure there.
So then I was doing a session with Amanda Wyatt, she is a animation and video game director. And she was telling me about her friend, Jonathan Rumi, right? And I'm like, you know him? And she goes, oh yeah, he's a really great guy, blah, 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 And then I told her about my podcast idea, and she goes, you should ask Jonathan Rumi to be on your podcast, like your first guest.
It sounds
on your
preordained
podcast.
to me.
So I was like, maybe I could interview Jesus.
I think from a marketing standpoint, that's a pretty good way to launch a new podcast. I think from a YouTube thumbnail perspective, if like I interviewed Jesus on your YouTube thumbnail, like that's getting some downloads. So
that's pretty good. Yeah. Let's see. I'll call his agent and see how it goes.
All right.
See
so
if
there
I
you
can
go.
get a return call.
The only thing missing now is the launch date, but I mean, it sounds to me like this is pretty much inevitable at this point. So I very much look forward to listening to you interview Jesus.
Right on. Me too. I may have to confess a few things first. Anyway, thank you so much. I'm so happy to talk to you, and
thank you.
And if I can ever be of service to you in any way, you let me know, because I'd be so happy to.
Thank you very much, Kay. This was fun.